Hi, welcome to Comic Talk. I'm Josh,
I'm Drew.
and this is our classic read episode for sometime in September. This is Goodbye Chunky Rice by Craig Thompson. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So, just right off the bat, I'll give a quick synopsis of this, I
Sure,
guess, or
yeah.
you can go for it if you'd like.
No, you're more familiar with it than I am.
Am I? Okay, so this is Craig Thompson's first work from the late 90s. I believe it came out in 99. It might have been 98. And in this book, basically, we have a sort of contemplative, delicate kind of story about Chunky Rice, a small little turtle fella, going on his first adventure, leaving the town that he was born and raised in, and setting off to find his way in the world. Let's just start right off with what's your overall impression of this book?
In the first few pages, I was a little bit confused as to like what was actually going on and stuff. And I mean, it clears up pretty well. The whole puppy killing subplot I wasn't a huge fan of. And even after I finished it, it seemed a little bit shallow maybe, but it's weird because the more that I've thought about it over the past like hour or so, even really, like there's so much subtext in here. It's ridiculous. Like the highlight of this book is easily the subtext. I mean, that's the standout thing. It's not the dialogue, it's not the story itself, it's not even the characters really. It's just it's more implications than anything else, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty apt description of Craig Thompson's work in general. He doesn't have incredible dialogue. I think his art is pretty awesome, but this book is kind of proto Craig Thompson because this is his first published work. It does continue to advance from here, which I hope in time we're going to get to some of his other later works. This one I just thought was cool to start with because it was his first work. It's old, it's cheap. That's a big thing. You can usually find this in like a used bookstore for $5 or $6. I've seen it in tons of bookstores. But yeah, it's very soft work.
So let's talk about what you mean by soft then.
It's, well, like you say, everything's kind of between the lines. You really have to stop, take a breath, look through the panels to really understand what he's getting at. You're not going to get it just from reading the dialogue.
So on that note, what would you say is the overall theme or message or moral of the story?
I don't think there really is one, which is kind of why I like Craig Thompson. I don't think he ever really does have a message or a moral to his works so much as it's more the idea with reading his stuff is to just slip into this world and explore the emotional breadth of people that may not immediately seem to have an emotional depth to them. It's all of his work is kind of delving into people that you don't immediately respond to or feel comfortable with and seeing what's under the surface of those people by taking some time to settle in with them.
Yeah, interesting.
I guess.
Personally, I would say that the goodbye is obviously a reoccurring theme in this. We see it in, I mean, I don't want to say every manifestation because, you know, there's millions of things that could pull people apart or whatever, but there are several instances of it. And it's weird how, at least I personally got kind of the same feeling from each of these setups. Like, there's estranged siblings. We have our Chunky Rice guy who's in love with this little mouse girl. And you get the same kind of sadness and longing on their behalf in each of these scenarios, which is kind of interesting because you're not often presented with a bunch of goodbyes in a row. Like, it's usually a once in a while thing, you know, but then when you read like about a good 6 or 7 of them in a sitting, like you start to realize how much they all have in common. And it's strange.
Yeah, I think you're right. There is a lot of longing or lost relationships in here. And it's interesting that we have these Siamese twins in here as well that cannot
Can never say goodbye.
say goodbye to each other as kind of a counterpoint to the rest of the characters in this book. Because you're right, we do see goodbyes over and over again, not just with Chunky, but with the two brothers, and then with the Merle, the bird.
Yeah, the bird.
We just keep seeing these different types of goodbyes. And
The dogs again, which I wish that wasn't in this.
I also, for me, a big part of this book is the artwork. I think that there's a certain delicacy to his work that, again, it's kind of in a proto state here. It's not as pronounced as some of his later work is. But there's a real deliberate delicacy to the way he crafts his panels and the work that's in here. There's a couple pages that there's one specifically that I really love. It's this page here. And one of the nice things about this black and white work is it's going to show up
Perfectly for us.
pretty nice on our page here. And we see here, you could quickly look at this and get nothing out of it. But if you take your time with it and really take a look, you start to see how much thought he's put into how he's arranged this. And to show you all of this life that's happening in this image. And most of this life these are not even characters in this book. And you see this repeated a lot.
No idea who a lot of these sort of side characters are.
Right. This is just showing life happening and a character that's watching life happen around him. And we get a lot of these introspective and, what would you call it, extrospective moments?
I think I've used that word before, so... Yeah.
All right, well, sure, I like it. Of characters just witnessing the world around them, and he takes the time to not just show the character witnessing the world, but he shows you that world that they're witnessing and how it's affecting them.
Yeah, and the protagonist is really, our Chunky Rice friend is really effective at doing that, because he is very quiet. I mean, it speaks volumes about Craig Thompson and that he was able to develop this character as much as he did, and you know, his unwanted needs and stuff like that, given the fact that he's not talking for most of it. I mean, I think you could probably count on two hands, like the amount of word bubbles he gets through the whole book. But yeah, just the fact that he's the central character and everybody's talking to them, like throughout them having their own exposition, you get a little bit of exposition on him as well.
Right. Yeah,
it's a really cool trick.
They're all almost pieces of his personality that he doesn't express himself. You almost get this feeling that...
Or foils, you know. I mean, it goes both ways.
Yeah, it's a very interestingly written book, I think, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it. One of the reasons I love Craig Thompson in general is he just has a different approach to a lot of the other people that, especially we've been reading and talking about on this show. So I think overall this is the sort of thing that could probably pull a reader that hasn't read this kind of thing before into a whole different realm of books, because there's a lot of other writers out there like Jason.
And there's a lot of stuff like this that's just graphic novels that are never comics.
Right, things like Persepolis, Black Hole, and all of these other more indie, non-comic, non-cape, non-even detective or noir, just these interesting slice of life works that are more autobiographical. And it's probably odd to call this autobiographical, but
I think you'd have to.
It really is, especially when you read the leaflet inside and learn that he was writing this right as he had left his hometown for the first time. And so this is, in a way, an autobiographical work of Craig Thompson. So it's an interesting juxtaposition, and it's a good book, I think, to pull you into these other realms of comics.
There are things that were never comics.
Right.
Yeah. Would you call it pictorial fiction or something?
Graphic novels.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I'm sure there's a word for it.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Sequential art, I think,
maybe
is actually the term.
I like that he likes Motown. That was a cute kind of little thing. So I think we should really talk about some of the other side characters a little bit more in depth, because they are such a huge part of this. So the first one, I would kind of put his mouse friend in the same category as him, as, you know, very limited exposition and whatnot, but you still, throughout scenarios and stuff, get a pretty good picture. But the first big talker we get is our I don't even know, he's using like some some Scottish words here and there, but it's also a little bit redneck, and I assume it's his neighbor.
Yeah, it's his
name?
landlord. I
Landlord,
believe.
that's it. Yeah. What did you think about him as a character?
Well, I think this character is intended to be mentally retarded.
Yeah.
I think he's literally mentally challenged is the idea here. Maybe not to the point of being special needs per se. I mean, he is a landlord.
Yeah,
But I do get the feeling that he's a little bit slow. He's treated poorly by the other kids and doesn't catch on, we see, when it goes into his backstory.
Yeah. He struck me as more one of those simple
Simple
people,
is a good
who,
way to put it.
probably didn't really technically pass high school, but, the teachers were like, well, whatever.
He's a nice kid.
He's a nice
Let's let him
kid.
through.
Right.
Right.
And then now, he's got, his nice little blue-collar niche carved out for him, which is fine. But he really has some intense emotions throughout this book.
He does.
In fact, I guess 3 of the goodbyes that we see in here are sort of centered around him, because there's the bird, and then there's Chunky, and then there's his brother.
Right. And I think he's really meant to represent probably the simple people in like a small town life.
Yeah,
that
the common clay,
Right. And how you can be sympathetic to those folks, but also see where they lack or how they fail to interest or stimulate certain types of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it starts with him seeming just a little annoying almost. I was annoyed with the character at first. Like,
Yeah, me too.
This guy. But
Trying
by
to
the
figure out what
end,
the hell he was saying.
by the end, you become sympathetic to the character. At least I did.
Yeah, definitely. You really see him. He's very sincere. Like he really tries. He's not fake at any point. He doesn't lie to anybody. He's just a simple fellow.
Right.
Which is a pretty big contrast to his brother, the captain, which is just like the dick of the graphic novel.
Right.
Like if there's an antagonist other than negative emotions and stuff, if there's a person that's an antagonist, it's definitely him.
Mm-hmm. But he only barely qualifies for the label, I think. I think you're probably right that the real antagonist of the book is just emotional stress. And
But
Goodbye is almost the antagonist of the book.
He's pretty manipulative, though.
He is.
And real full of himself at the same time.
Mm-hmm. He's kind of a dick to his brother.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not really a big part of the graphic novel either. He's
in it pretty heavy for the at least the last half.
I suppose you're right. So how about the sisters, the Siamese twins? How did you feel about them?
Oh, I thought it was genius.
Yeah, I liked them a lot.
The part where one of them saying that the other one always falls asleep a couple hours before they do, and they really enjoy it because that's a couple hours of quiet time that they get.
Mm-hmm.
It's again, if we're looking at the antagonist as goodbyes and stuff, this would definitely be the foil of that, of somebody that never gets a goodbye, and just little things like that you never think about, and you never really reflect on what it would mean to have somebody there with you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them's smoking, and the other one's all pissed off because they share lungs and stuff.
Yeah, angry about it.
Yeah.
And he asks her a really poignant question about can you see her dreams, which really struck me as interesting because they are attached at the head as well.
Right.
And the response to that was interesting. Just a cool character, really well portrayed, and just strange. What a strange addition.
Yeah. I just feel bad for this mouse so much.
Yeah, the poor little mouse is so poignant.
Yeah. She spends like her whole day collecting bottles to put notes in, and they're just either like pictures or they just say, "I miss you."
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I think she even says at one point, like, how many times can you say "I miss you" or something like that.
Yeah, it's almost the character embodiment of longing or just missing a person. It's almost all the character does throughout the whole thing, and it's not even just here's a panel of this mouse being sad. It's pages, which I think again is the beauty of Craig Thompson. He will just revel in these simple emotions. He doesn't just give them to you. He makes you sort of wallow around in them for a while. which
yeah.
I think is really beautiful. It's one of the reasons I love his work, and it's shown really well here with that character specifically, where we just see 2 or 3 pages in a row of her just kind of hanging out on the rocks being sad.
Yeah. And again, as far as face value versus reflective value, when I first finished this, I was really pissed off that they didn't develop her a little bit more, or their relationship a little bit more. You know, I would have liked to seen like a good 20 pages, you know, of them just sort of being around each other and building the dynamic of their relationship and stuff. But I think it's almost more powerful that he didn't, you know, because then you don't have anything to have opinions about.
Right.
You just know that they fit together, and then now they're not together. And
Right.
one thinks that the other one should leave, and the other one's like, well, okay.
Yeah, you don't need the before because of the way he manages to show you the after. You understand the before without needing to be told about it.
Definitely.
All right, well, Drew, I think that pretty much wraps up our discussion for Goodbye Chunky Rice by Craig Thompson. All of our readers out there, if you want to check out more from us, you can come back next Wednesday night, Thursday morning, where we'll do a pull list review. That's where we talk about that week's newest comics that we pulled personally. We read them and review them. It's an incredible concept that we came up all by ourselves. And then following that, next Monday, we will be doing Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, Volume 1. That is a work that's been getting a lot of critical acclaim, but it's a little bit of a mixed review because it's so sort of out of left field for Marvel. They kind of Batgirled up the Marvel universe a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're going to read that and take a look at it and tell you what we think about it as 2 middle-aged men. So that should be pretty interesting.
Works for me.
Yeah, I'm excited to read it. I have not yet, neither of you, right?
No.
So
no.
we'll be reading that this week, and we'll come back fresh on it and tell you what we think.
Yes, we will.
All right, other than that, go ahead and like and subscribe below. Give us some comments about what you think we should read, if there's any trades or interesting works out there, maybe something a little bit outside of the mainstream that you think we might have missed. We'd love to have more suggestions. And also remember, we got that big Marvel switch-up, change-a-roo coming. We're still trying to figure out what we're going to read for that. So let us know down there what you think we should read out of the new Marvel titles. We've gotten a few suggestions that we'll be talking about at the end of the month. Thanks. Bye.
I'm in below!